Good morning. You're watching City News 24/7. I'm Faiza Amin. On the heels of a possible federal election call, and the Prime Minister is using these final days in power to meet with Canada's premiers. Glenn McGregor joined us early on City News 24/7 to explain why Mark Carney would call this meeting now.
Yeah, this is his first chance and possibly last chance for a First Minister's meeting. That is a meeting between the Prime Minister and all the premiers. Most of them are going to come to Ottawa. I believe Danielle Smith is dialing in remotely by Zoom or video link. But it's kind of the last chance to talk about internal trade. That's really the focus of this meeting today, knocking down the trade barriers between provinces to ensure better flow of goods and boost Canada's overall economy. There's estimates that could give us a 15% boost in our GDP if we eliminated some of the tariffs between the provinces, as well as some of the rules that prevent people from moving from one province to another to take work in areas like the skilled trades that Pierre Poilievre was just talking about. But I want to pick up on something that Poilievre said just right at the end of the press conference. He was asked a question by a reporter about Danielle Smith's statement that she posted on social media yesterday, shortly after she met with Prime Minister Carney in Edmonton. Carney was out there. Remember, we saw those pictures yesterday of Carney going for a skate with the Edmonton Oilers in the morning. But then he had a meeting with the Premier, and it did not sound like it went very well, because right after that meeting, she had posted this long list of demands. I'm going to read some of them to you. And she says if he doesn't heed these demands within 6 months, assuming that he wins government again, I suppose, there will be an unprecedented national unity crisis. This is the idea that Alberta, there's separatist movements in Alberta because they are so dissatisfied with what they believe to be their mistreatment at the hands of the federal government, particularly in the oil and gas sector. So her list of demands, almost all of them focused on energy production. She says she wants to see the repeal of Bill C-69, which some people refer to as the No New Pipelines Act. It's basically a much more involved process for approval of pipeline projects. She wants to lift the tanker ban off the BC coast. Of course, people in British Columbia, much more environmentalists, don't want to see oil tankers off their coasts in certain regions. She also wants to ban the oil and gas emissions cap. That's something Poilievre talked about in that press conference as well. This is the federal government putting a limit on how much oil and natural gas can be produced in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Also wants to end the prohibition on single-use plastics. This is, things like switching to paper straws instead of plastic straws, or wood forks instead of plastic forks, as a way of weaning our dependency off fossil fuels. Of course, those plastic products, are ultimately made with oil. And then she also wants the federal government to abandon the net zero car mandate. This is really unusual that a premier would do this, and she also kind of weighed into the election campaign that we think is coming up, encouraging people in Alberta to vote for the party and the candidates that are advocating for freeing Alberta from federal overreach. Again, setting up this conflict between the Liberal government in Ottawa and the UCP government in Alberta. Here's what Mark Carney said in a press conference later today responding to that.
Look, and I had a meeting with the Premier this morning. I'll be with all the premiers tomorrow for the First Minister's meeting. Let me tell you part of the focus of that meeting, because it goes directly to your question. It's about getting things done. It's about getting, yes, pipelines built across this country so that we can displace imports of foreign oil. It's about building out the energy infrastructure more broadly.
Now, it's possible that Mark Carney actually decides to run for a seat in British Columbia, although a new seat is opened up in the Ottawa area. Keep in mind that although he's Prime Minister now, he does not have a seat in the House of Commons, which he will ultimately need after the next election campaign. The Liberal Party last night announcing they've disqualified a sitting MP for the region of Nepean. That's right next to Pierre Poilievre's riding in the suburbs of Ottawa, Chandra area. He had been trying to run for the leadership of the party against Mr. Carney, was disqualified by the Liberal Party. They never really gave clear reasons of that. Now they're saying he cannot carry the party's colors into the election that we expect to be coming at the end of April or the beginning of May. That creates a possibility maybe Mark Carney is going to run in that seat, because he does live currently in downtown Ottawa. But this meeting of the First Ministers this afternoon, I think it's going to be more cordial because Carney will have other ministers other premiers that are more supportive of him, including Wab Kinew from Manitoba, David Eby from British Columbia, Susan Holt from New Brunswick. They'll all be there. I think they're all going to be there in person. Some of them might video conference in, but it's really kind of a last chance for Carney to try and move the ball forward on knocking down those trade barriers and getting everybody on side, on Team Canada, to resist these economic threats from the United States. And then, of course, we're going to be probably by Sunday into a federal election campaign.
Right. And today, Mark Carney and the premiers are going to be speaking. We're going to have that right here on City News 24/7. We'll be checking in with Glenn as well to see how their talks are going. Glenn McGregor in Ottawa, thank you so much.